Good afternoon. This is so exciting. 10 participants from the Out of Print Writing Workshop at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival Literature Platform are here to present short excerpts of their work. We wish we could do the entire story this afternoon to all of you. I'm really excited. My name is Indira Chandrasekhar. I'm the curator of literature at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival, but I'm also the editor of Out of Print. So I've been part of the team that's worked with the participants on their stories. The other two are Zui Kumar-Reddy, if you can raise your hand, Zui, and Vandana Devi, both of whom have participated in working with these stories. Okay, on to Sophia. We're not going to waste any time chatting. On to Sophia to read her excerpt.
Both gates had been torn down by the British when they conquered Sindh in 1860. All traces of them had been long obliterated, but the names still stuck, like a piece of flesh-pink gum on the underside of a heavy jackboot. Since then, the thrust of the city had been unrelentingly upward. Have I run out of time? I think I have. It's 1:34.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Sophia. On to Tanvi. That was
Hi.
Yes.
So now we'll be having Tanvi Chowdhury coming on as the next writer and reader.
Okay, while we wait, thank you, Sophia. That was a beautiful reading. The tech people will just help us in a second. I am not quite sure where they are. Just call them. Nishu, if we could have the next frame, please. All right.
Hello, I'm Tanvi, and the name of my piece is Noora. I'm going to just get started. She slipped out of her apartment, took her scooter out, and sighed before jamming the key and bringing the vehicle to life. Ghost hunting was a ridiculous business to be getting half her income from, but it was even more ridiculous to look forward to meeting a ghost. By the time she reached Gomti Nagar, Zainab had already left, her keys in the potted plant by the doorway. Noora was nowhere to be found. She did that sometimes, settled into the walls of the house with her light shining through the cracks. Lakshmi rolled her eyes. Come on, don't trouble me. Noora flickered into being near the dining table. So, what have you been up to? Asked Lakshmi, rolling out the atta from the fridge. Noora pressed her fingers to the table, white light leaking out of her in a stream. It's one of those days, isn't it? Murmured Lakshmi. She threw a roti on the tawa. Noora was the most people-like of ghosts she had ever seen. You'd be good at scaring people, mused Lakshmi, flipping a roti. Noora left feelings hovering all over her home instead of sounds and fears. If you didn't know what you were looking for, it was infinitely scarier than a woman moaning with manacles on her shins. There was something wistful that she left in her wake, something bittersweet and forgotten, like a sense of being lost. Ghosts were rarely very dramatic. They never seemed to want vengeance for the wrongs done to them. They just buried themselves in half feelings manifested by destroying things. You had to manage them, give them distractions to ease their pain, make them feel loved. Noora jerked her head towards Zainab's photo of her family. Well, No, confessed Lakshmi. I didn't have time to visit them and I didn't. Noora waited. I don't want to, finished Lakshmi. I came to visit you, didn't I? Noora's fingers slipped between hers, and Lakshmi felt warm and cold at the same time. More light dripped from her than ever before, and Lakshmi knew this was the last time. Thank you so much, and I will just take a minute to thank the rest of this workshop. It was excellent, and it was really good to meet all these writers and fix my writing in many different ways. And that's really all I have for you guys.
Thank you.
Tanvi. That's such a beautiful story. Next, we have Vaishali reading her story. So,
thanks, Zoe.
Vaishali K reading her story.
Thanks, Zoe. I'm K. Vaishali. I'm reading an excerpt from my story, Floral Patterns. I was at the mall with my girlfriend Coco, who needed a new hoodie. I held her hand on the escalator and I watched her panic. She avoided my eyes and glanced nervously at everyone around us in what looked like an attempt to communicate that it wasn't her idea to hold my hand. I let go. I'd been dreaming of holding her hand in the mall since I realized I liked her and was waiting for her to realize that she liked me too. We held hands in our hostel room all the time. She had baby soft hands that I'm always aching to hold. Why not at a mall? Was she uncomfortable with folks thinking we were lovers? She was 25 and it was her first relationship. She probably needed time to adjust. But who would really think we were lovers in Hyderabad? They'd probably think we were sisters, even if we told them we were lovers. Maybe she'd be uncomfortable if I were a boy and held her hand too. I asked her why she felt awkward and she said, I don't want to have private emotions in public. Coco was a private person. If she could go through life pulling no attention to herself, she would. She was at the university studying painting and I was studying English. In 6 months, she had read everything I've written, even my novel. But I've not seen any of her paintings. I know artists shy away from showing a work in progress, but she won't even show me the Madhubani painting she made in high school. She won't show me any pictures of herself from before we met, or pictures of her parents, her siblings, or her house in Nepal. When I ask her to see these pictures, she says, it's not worth seeing. We spent all day and night with each other, and to my surprise, even after 6 months, her company never bored or annoyed me. We loved each other's company, but we also loved our own company, and we respected that. Sometimes we talked into the night, like we were the only ones in the world. Sometimes we stayed in the same room without talking for hours. And sometimes we stayed in our own room all day, giving each other space to paint and write. It was all the goodness of being alone, but with a brilliant woman next to me, who listened to my feverish ramblings about plot ideas, distracted me with funny videos when I was stressed, and played old music and helped me when I was sad. It was great. Before we met, we both had elaborate plans to live as spinsters. Coco thought she was asexual and was considering her life as a Buddhist nun. My ex and I were the only women who love women that I knew. I waited 4 years for her to tell her family that she liked me, but instead she said she'll marry a boy. I was convinced that I'll never find love again. I was writing a cookbook that had measurements for single servings of traditional South Indian dishes and pro tips for spinsters who can't be bothered. Maybe I won't need to finish it. So that was my story. And I want to thank all the folks who read my story and gave feedback because that really helped me complete the story and add finishing touches. And I also got to read 10 wonderful stories. So this was a really good week. Thank you.
So lovely. Thank you, Vaishali. I love the bit about the single recipes. Next, we will have Gitanjali Joshua reading her story. And I believe she has a special clue in the backdrop for the listeners.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gitanjali. My story is called Frog Totem. It's told from the point of view of 8-year-old Samara and covers the incidents of a single Saturday morning. Samara is waiting to have breakfast with her two ammas, Madhurima and Meenakshi. As she waits, other characters come and go, and the reader sees them all through Samara's eyes. I'll just get started with the reading. Samara watched as Madhu Amma meticulously scrubbed the ceramic frogs. Samara didn't understand about the frogs, but there were bits and pieces that she knew were connected. When Madhu Amma had been very young and she hadn't become Samara's other Amma yet, she had been called Madhurima. She was married to a handsome, young, up-and-coming army officer. It turned out that some nightmares come in handsome husband shapes. No one believes they are nightmares at all, not even the shy, hopeful wife with repeatedly fractured fingers. Madhu Amma didn't like the ceramic frogs, but he had bought her one every month, smiling his too wide smile without crinkling his eyes. When he died, the only things she took with her were the frogs. Did you love him? Samara looked straight up into Madhu Amma's eyes. Love could be a strange thing, she knew. Who? Asked Madhu Amma, momentarily confused. Your husband. Oh, I don't know, darling. Madhu Amma crouched down to Samara's eye level. I don't think that's what love should look like. She smiled suddenly, like a light had gone on behind her eyes. I love Meena, and I love you. Samara turned away and looked up at Meena Amma. Amma, how was I born? Madhu Amma grinned at Meena Amma. I guess it's your turn now. Tell me properly, whined Samara. You were a gift, Samara. A gift I wasn't looking for. A gift I fought until the first time I saw you, and then I fought to keep you. This didn't answer anything, but Samara knew better than to push her Amma. In her dreams, Samara was Schrodinger's baby, a cardboard box wrapped with shiny red paper and a gold ribbon. She wasn't real until Amma opened the box and wanted her alive, wanted to keep her. Love could be a strange thing, Samara knew. I hope you enjoyed that. I want to say a big thank you to the Out of Print and editorial team and to Kala Ghoda for organizing this workshop and bringing us all together. For me, the best part was getting to read such beautiful stories and being part of the whole group's creative process. The feedback from our peers was really helpful. Other writers saw things in a story or articulated them in ways I hadn't thought of. And the Out of Print team and the other writers posed questions that were interesting and challenging to grapple with and helped me think of the story in ways I hadn't thought of before. So thank you so much.
Beautiful. Schrodinger's baby. Next, we will have Megha S. Nair reading her humorous take on Love and Plurality.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So my name is Megha Nair. I'm from Ahmedabad. And the story that I'm reading an excerpt out of is called A Friendly Note to My Husband's Girlfriend. So I'm guessing this is, the subject is self-explanatory. My story is written in the form of a second person address from one woman to another. And I'm going to read out from the middle. So let me go. You might find it comforting to know that my husband is grouchy and irritable with everyone, not just with you. So, let me share with you 2 techniques that I have found extremely useful over the years in tackling his moods. The first one is mute resignation. Whenever you sense that he's making a huge mistake, just nod your head, keep quiet, and desist from commenting. Do not react, even when you know that he's headed for a free fall. If he asks for your opinion, say you don't have one and just smile. He will know from the look on your face that you don't quite approve of his plans. And yet, he will not be able to take offense since you wouldn't technically have said anything. Argument averted. The second method I use is called the B, not A technique. I learned in the early years of our marriage that if you want this man to agree with you on something, you suggest something completely different. So, let's say you're in the mood to watch a sitcom. You propose something like The Conjuring instead. Basically, you give him an opportunity to say no, because no is his favorite word. It makes him feel powerful, like he's steering the relationship. He will disagree with you and suggest something completely antithetical. With any luck, the opposite of a spooky film will be the sitcom of your choice. Why am I giving you advice though? Seems weird that I'm helping the woman who's sleeping with my husband, right? To tell you the truth, I was obviously mad at you at first. When I caught a glimpse of your naked posterior on his WhatsApp, I wanted to turn up at your doorstep with a butcher's knife. Like a normal wife, I wanted to grind you to a fine paste and feed you to the cats. But once my fury subsided and I started thinking straight, I remembered that you were not the one I'd exchanged my vows with. In fact, it turns out that you haven't exchanged vows with anyone at all, which means you can do as you please. Whether it is morally appropriate for you to date a married man is undoubtedly an important question, but it is much more relevant to me. It is less relevant to me than the question as to why my married man is dating you. So, I do not plan on fighting you. On the contrary, I empathize with you because I know what you've gotten yourself into. So that's it. That's the end of my extract. Gitanjali has already said everything I wanted to say about the takeaway from the workshop. It was an education in itself to hear so many people give their perspectives on your story. As a writer, when you write something, you think you're perfect. It takes this kind of discussion to realize that there are so many different ways you can tell your own story. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity, and I have loved reading every single one of your stories during this workshop. So thank you very much. Thank you to Kala Ghoda and thank you to the Out of Print team.
Thank you, Megha. Next, we have Aishi with her story. So can we have Aishi up on the screen?
Hi everyone, I'm Ayushi Aruna Agarwal and I'll be reading an excerpt from my story, Behind the Glass Wall. That's my first attempt at a piece of dystopian fiction and I'm overjoyed at being part of this community and this workshop. So I'll begin now. Zira pressed her nose to the glass wall and as usual saw nothing. Her food was kept ready for her next to the small window beside her bed that could only be opened from the outside. In a couple of minutes, the visitors would start pouring in. As she dabbed red color on her lips, she thought about her planned theatrics for today. Perhaps she will put on those long earrings and comb her hair several times. Then she could sweep her floor and sew something. All of that put together, if done at a leisurely pace, could surely take 30 minutes. The block of visitors would change, and then she could repeat. The green buzzer inside Zira's room started blinking. It was time. The count next to the light read 27. She poised herself on her bed and untied her hair. 26 men and a little boy, the first set of visitors in the 10 a.m. slot, stood behind a barricade that rose up till the midriff of the tallest of them. Some on tiptoes, some shuffling for more space, but all of them with their eyes glued to the glass wall, filled with wonder, fear, and anticipation. They held pamphlets that read, "The last woman amid us, watch, from a safe distance, what remains of the obsolete part of our species." Zira only faintly remembered the last time she had seen another woman. It had been her mother. They had clasped hands, and Zira had fallen asleep as her mother ran her fingers through her hair. It was also the last time that Zira had felt any warmth in her chest and a lightness in her body. Her mother was sent off to the state facility for women when Zira turned 9 and was deemed self-sufficient by the director. A few days ago, as she slept, she had broken through the glass wall and galloped into the world, a beastly thing, otherworldly thing. She ran so fast she couldn't tell if it were her legs that carried her or if she was flying in the wind. Her long black hair were dancing all around her and no one could see it. Yes, there was dance and no visitors. She burst onward and onward. So that's the little excerpt. I hope I've piqued your interest in reading the full story. I thought that this workshop was so fantastic, especially as somebody who doesn't do this as their main profession or vocation, to find a community where people can exchange their ideas on writing and give each other feedback, and to have somebody as well versed with the process as Indira, Vandana, and Zui help us was just beyond wonderful, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Aishi. Yeah, that was a very interesting dystopian story. So next we have Priya. So can we have Priya on the screen?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Priya, and I'm going to be reading an excerpt of my story called The Spare Room. Sunday afternoon. I was just about to take my nap when my phone buzzed. A message from Sudha. I'm in the neighborhood. Thought I can take a look at the room. Be there in 20? I decided I would tell her the room is no longer available. She arrived on a red scooter. Her face was tomato red from the blazing sun, but she smiled joyfully, as if she was a solar panel, freshly recharged. So, why is this place still available? After 2 months? She asked. Don't bother telling me Mr. Claim Sanction couldn't approve a candidate, she laughed. Miss Sudha, who all are there in your family? With a gentle yet tired smile, she told me that her husband died of cancer 10 years ago. Her son lived with his wife, but visited her frequently. Never had I expected Miss Sudha to have undergone any such tragedy. A woman who was so cheerful and would always organize potluck lunches for us at work, had been through so much. No one would have ever guessed that behind that laugh was well-guarded loss. I gave in. She moved in with just a couple of suitcases and a few boxes. That day was the first of the many Sundays that messed up my weekend ritual. It had not even been 2 hours since I handed over the keys when she returned to my doorstep. She wanted help hanging her wall paintings. I had to agree. When I entered the room, I was surprised to see how colorful and charming she had made the spare room. She worked fast. I thought for a single room, there'd be 1 or 2 paintings to be hung. Once again, she surprised me. She had 2 medium-sized paintings to be placed above the bed and several smaller ones all over the room, including photo frames. It probably took me longer to hang the paintings than the painter took to paint them. She was so fickle-minded. As soon as I would raise my arm to hammer the nail, she would stop me to rethink the position. I just stared at her from the ladder, resisting the temptation to accidentally drop one from her collection. On returning from work one day, she waved to me like a child greeting a long-lost friend. "Mr. Tyagi, come up for dinner. You must be tired," she yelled. Fearing that she would continue to shout till all our neighbors came out, I hurried on upstairs. The scintillating aroma of biryani filled the room. The kitchen counter did seem pretty small, but she never once complained. "Mr. Tyagi, I think it's about time you told me your story," she said. "Wife, children, criminal record, etc." I hesitated to answer. I didn't know what to share, where to begin. Very soon I realized how eager I was to confide. I had not done that in a very long time. I told her about my modest upbringing in a small family in Saharanpur. "I never married," I said. She raised her eyebrows. That's my story, and I'd like to thank Out of Breath. It was really, really out of print. It was really wonderful experience. Indira, Vandana, Zoe, thank you so much. Thank you to all the writers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. Next we have Himanshu, who will be reading his story.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, good afternoon. So first of all, I would like to thank Indira ma'am and the Out of Print team for organizing such a fun and informative workshop. And I would say that I'm privileged actually to be a part of this, be a participant within such a talented group. And I learned a lot from the critics. The workshops help you to exactly analyze and understand where you exactly stand. So with that, I would like to go to my story, his father's disease. He remembered their marriage day now. It had been a low-key affair with only the necessary people present. After the ceremony got over, Junti's friends had stopped an auto rickshaw and shoved them inside, with Raja, one of his friends, shouting over the din of traffic to Junti. "Everyone must be waiting, so take Nobo straight to her new home." Sitting on the rickshaw seat, Junti had suddenly panicked. Will he be able to keep her happy? But a shy Dalemi with her head wrapped in the bride's stole had placed her warm hand on his. Finally, when the rickshaw had stopped by the front gate of the house, they were greeted by a smiling Ranjit who had been standing in the sun since morning to greet his brother and his new bride. There was a hurried shout of "they have come" from inside the house, followed by a frenzied shuffling of feet from inside, till their mother appeared carrying a bevy of utensils. They were then laid in a single file before the bride, who had then pushed them aside with her right foot, as per the custom. All this while, Junti recalled, Daleme's hands had been locked into his. Now, he looked at his sleeping wife again and promised to himself that things would be different. She had suffered a lot. As Junti sat awake looking at his sleeping wife, a dream that had been tormenting her for days now was troubling Dalimi again. In the dream, Ranjit is standing beside her bed with a note held in his hands. He hesitates there for the longest time and then slips the note under her mattress. She realizes he is going away and will never come back, but she keeps her eyes shut and pretends to sleep. After some time, he walks away and her hand instinctively reaches out for her husband. But he is not there. She jumps up and starts searching frantically in every room, but her husband and Rajit are nowhere to be found. She reads the note and realizes that finally they both have run away with each other. Now what will happen to her? Will the same story from her husband's childhood repeat again? She wakes from this dream with a start and holds her husband tightly. Junti looks into her welled-up eyes, surprised, and notices how they resemble the Brahmaputra in monsoons. At places where the rising water hits the cliff, the dark brown of the soil mixing with the blue overflowing waters. He sighs and wonders if this would be the beginning of a lifetime of compromise or a second chance at happiness. So that's my story, and I would like to say thanks a lot again for all the people involved, especially Indira ma'am and Juhi for making this possible and giving me this opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Himanshu. Next we have Riya Mehta, who will be reading from her story.
Hi, hello everyone. I just want to first thank Out of Print and KGAF for letting me have this opportunity to read a short excerpt of my story. And I would like to say that writing, as we all know, is a very solitary process, and I'm very grateful to have had somebody with me throughout the creative process and have great feedback and read like 10 wonderful stories. I'm very excited about that. And without further ado, my story is called It Rains Rainbows in the Big City. And here it is. 2,500 rupees for an hour of therapy? As if he had that kind of money lying around. It was normal not to be attracted to your girlfriend after years of being together, wasn't it? Companionship and compatibility. Those were the foundations of a good relationship. Was having a sex life really all that important? But since he cared about Smita, he had agreed like a fool. Mr. Yadav stirred, and he took this chance to softly ask him to turn around and lie on his back instead. As he settled down again, Jay moved his hands to his chest, working in clockwork strokes as hair got entangled in his gloved fingers. He pulled on them a little, evoking an involuntary groan from his client. He thought back to why he had moved to the city in the first place. It was all Suraj's doing, really. Suraj, his best friend and his first client, demanding free massages whenever he got the chance. You know, you can be anyone you want in the big city, Suraj had declared, spreading his hands wide as the wind ruffled their shirts. They were sitting at their favorite spot on the hill overlooking their small town. Empty cups of chai at their feet. Anything? Jay had asked, cocking his eyebrows. Anything. Suraj's grin was infectious, and Jay had believed him. As he waited for Mr. Yadav after the service, Jay thought about that day on the hill again. He picked up his phone to find Suraj on Facebook. There he was, smiling at the camera. Jay zoomed in, checking to see if the old tattoo still existed. An umbrella on his left arm, as it rained the colors of the rainbow. It was still right there, even if the colors seemed a little faded. Hey Suraj, how are you? I know it's been long, but do you want to catch up sometime? He pressed send before he could change his mind or feel awkward about it. As he packed up for the day, Jay's phone alerted him to a Facebook message. Jay, it's so nice to hear from you. How are you, dude? Of course we should meet up. This is my number, 91371-59091. Call me. Jay smiled as he read the message. Maybe the colors were not as faded as he thought. Thank you so much. That's my story. I would like to thank Indira ma'am, Vandana and Zoe once more for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Riya. Thank you for that story. And finally, we have Rebecca who will be reading her story. So can we have Rebecca on the screen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I'll be reading from my story, Blood Oranges. You won't even kiss me. What oral orgasm? Leah said, poking Kay's shoulder. Are you really suggesting that I can't? Kay challenged. Maybe, she smiled. A silence spread over them, tissue thin, engulfing them in a momentary intimacy, an intimacy that chances upon friendship with the sole intention of complicating it, an intimacy that teases the cinder of common sense, a thrilling intimacy of first. That's when they kissed for the first time. He pulled her hand towards him. She had never imagined he'd kiss her, let alone kiss her as they sat by the ghats. He tilted his head to draw her in. She did not resist. Her eyes gave her away when he looked at her, her eyes that looked happy in abandon in a public place, kissing a man she had been friends with for so long. She leaned in for a second time. He pulled away and laughed. We have a problem, he said. We both enjoy the lower lip. Her face lit up with laughter. And this time, they both moved in to kiss each other. Another problem, he said, pulling away. Her eyes shut and leaning in, she laughed. What this time? No tongue? He gently held her shoulders and adjusted her like a shirt on a hanger. Lee, there are a couple of men watching us. She stiffened, tried not to be jerky with her movements, but she could see the men from the corner of her eye chewing pan. When they noticed she was aware, they all spat in unison on the staircase leading downwards to where she and Kay sat. A warning. She looked away and made eye contact with Kay. Kay's eyes looked wild with worry, but he didn't say a word. She mustered on, I won't make such a bad wife, you know. They aren't going to marry us off. This isn't the love jihad they're looking for. Kay was making a list of all the times this happened to people in the newspapers, the Mangalore incident, the shutting down of Lucknow University, the marrying of animals on Valentine's Day, the lynching of people. The news flashed before him one by one. He wondered what these men would do. Leah could no longer hear the river reaching for the stairs. Her mind wandered, and the most gruesome rape of the last decade came to mind. Nirbhaya, she said softly. Nirbhaya. So that's the excerpt from my story. I would like to thank the Out of Print team for their suggestions, and thank you everyone on the team for giving me all the suggestions that helped rework this story, and also all the other participants who helped. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Now we have an exciting moment. I think all 13 of us will be able to come on screen. Sophia, if you'll be able to put your video on again, it would be lovely. It just was alerted by the tech people that we can do it. And so there we are. I don't know if we're all visible. How wonderful. So everybody in Kala Ghoda can see us too on the insider page. Yeah, I think maybe Zui, Vandana and I could each comment on what the experience was like for us working with your stories. Who would like to go first? Zui, do you want to go first?
I would love to go first. For me, it was such a beautiful experience, honestly, because to write about love and plurality, the subject that I think is so important at any given point in time, but to write about that with the sincerity and empathy that all of you did, I believe, was so, just as a reader, such a hopeful thing to read. And I think also ending with Rebecca's piece, it reminds us of why we need to keep writing. So thank you for that.
Vandana.
Yeah, it was such an amazing experience to go through all of the stories that had come, and all of the discussions that the three of us had also. It was very interesting to see how there were so many stories of same-sex love and so many stories that talked about love in so many different ways. It was a very interesting experience for us to read these stories as stories, and also in the larger context of what is happening around us. So, and yeah, it was a wonderful time to interact with everyone and hear everyone's comments and get feedback on our feedbacks as well. So that was a lot of fun. And yeah, like Indra had mentioned in the beginning, we feel so much attachment to the pieces as well. The pieces that we have edited, we feel like it feels personal to us as well. So that was a really good thing to do, and it was so much fun to meet all of you and be doing this here with all of you.
Thank you. Yes, I think, well, Zui and Vandana have said it all, but really the very important part of it was, firstly, that your stories were all so very good. We received a lot of submissions, and I have to say that it was terribly difficult to select 10 workshop participants. We'd have loved to have worked with more, but I think it just wouldn't have been feasible in this online space. And perhaps also for our heads, to be able to invest so deeply in so many stories would have been difficult. So to select 10 was very tough, but once we had, I think it felt just right. These were 10 stories showing diversity in the way they approached the themes, that made us surprised, that made us sit up. None of us had quite anticipated what we would get. So each of them was so different and so unexpected. And so that was terribly exciting. And I think each of the stories really had a very fine and careful approach to the idea of love and plurality. So for us, that was terribly exciting. We were really, really happy to work with your works. And as we've told all of you, we've decided, since they were all of such interesting, diverse and high quality, we would like to bring them out as a special issue in on the Out of Print blog, a special feature. So the stories will be published there, and that's terribly exciting. I cannot end without saying thank you to Context, which is the publishing house that brought out the Out of Print 10-year anthology, which of course I want to show off by bringing it close to the camera. Each of the participants in the workshop will be given a copy of the anthology by Context, and so we thank them for that. And thank you for your writing, and thank you for having faith in us and sharing your works with us and being such great participants. We have like a few minutes left if anyone wants to say anything, and then we'll all say thank you again. Yeah, just feel free to jump in with any comment. Keep it short.
I just wanted to say that everybody's stories were excellent, and it's always nice when magazines like Out of Print think of writing in communities, because I think someone had mentioned before their reading that writing is usually a solitary endeavor. I find it very hard to write alone. My friends, they are constantly editing with me, and it's always good to have more and more editors and more people to flesh out your creative process with you. So it's a good thing to try.
Thank you.
I'll also like to add, if I may, that writing it's a journey. And it's so important to take feedback and to improve on your journey. There is no right and wrong answers sometimes, but there are different perspectives. And when you're exposed to professional and co-writers who are undergoing the same journey as you are, that's just about self-improving. And that's really critical for any writer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to add to that as well. When it comes to fresh perspectives, I think what I learned in this workshop was, while each reader takes your story differently, it is the healthy criticism that really, truly makes your story what it is. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is so important and so significant to the end result of what the story becomes. And I'm really grateful that I had such great writers and I had such great editors to make my story what it became today.
Additionally, I feel that Out of Print has been giving a wonderful opportunity to all the people, especially budding writers like me, to encourage their work. And you get to know actually where exactly you stand and how, like someone already said, how different views can be had looking at the same story. So it helps you as a writer to think from those views. Why didn't I think of those views? So it helps the overall journey in that sense. So thanks a lot, Out of Print. Thank you.
I wanted to say something. So when we submit to different platforms, I mean in India and also abroad, there's an element of censorship that comes in automatically. Some of it is there's some amount of self-censorship, and there's some that comes in the form of magazine guidelines. For example, a lot of first world magazines will not accept narratives that are very peculiar and that don't fit into the mainstream. Just to give an example, if I write about arranged marriages, there is a possibility that a magazine will reject my story, not because it doesn't have literary merit, but because a story about arranged marriage may not resonate with the majority of their readership, which may be white or at least non-Indian. Right. So that's one reason why we sometimes hold back from writing about some specific stuff and tend to write more safe or politically correct narratives. There's also the fact that, I mean, with the current political climate in India and the world, you don't really want to make mentions of religion or anything that could be a contentious topic eventually. But then when I read the stories that everybody in this group had written, I saw that somebody had written erotica, somebody had written about incest, somebody had mentioned the political climate very clearly in no uncertain terms. Somebody had taken the liberty to depict a homosexual relationship between two people in the army, which I thought was pretty courageous. I mean, it's a little risky given the circumstances we're in. So for me, the biggest takeaway has been that I personally should be a little more courageous. I think we should be allowed to write the stories that we want to write, and all this censorship and the self-censorship and all of that should not bog us down. So that's what I'm taking away.
Thank you.
For change. Yeah.
Sophie, do you want to say
something? Yes, I was going to say that the community of South Asian voices that I've been part of has been so valuable. And it's very rare that one gets such a feedback, and it allows you. It had a wonderful feeling of like you're not out there alone in the world. As an immigrant here, I felt very, very isolated. I've been living in the States for over 30 years, and it's been amazing to find your tribe. And, this has been truly a warming and a heartwarming experience and journey. And just briefly about the critical process, that's also been very valuable, because all of us, I believe, have blind spots, because we don't see, it's like we're driving on this journey and we don't see so much, because we've just, as people mentioned, it's been solitary process. And it's such a corrective to the blind spot. Like for me, I mentioned earlier, I've been primarily a poet. So my writing tends towards the more descriptive and lyrical. And it has been really very useful to get the focus turned back onto the narrative and to connect with this wonderful community of people. It's been invaluable. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
To everyone, and to Kala Ghoda and Out of Print.
Gitanjali, you raised your hand.
For me too, it was the sense of community that was really valuable, especially at this, this year where we've all been so far from our friends and so many of our networks. It was really, I know there are lots of limitations to this sort of digital kind of a workshop, and it would have been wonderful if it could have been in person. But even despite that, it was really exciting to have access to all of your stories, to get to look at how differently, as someone mentioned, how differently all of you had looked at it, and to have so many people take your writing seriously and to make it a less solitary process. It was a wonderful experience.
That's great. Is there anyone else? Vaishali, yes?
I just wanted to add that I've been looking for South Asian women writers, and especially in the short story form. And now I'm glad I know 8 more. So thanks for that.
Yeah, if I can also add, I just wanted to say that everyone has mentioned it's an extremely solitary process. And I think the pandemic has made some of us feel a lot more lonelier than we otherwise feel just writing in our rooms. And even though this has all happened remotely online, I feel this sense of warmth towards everyone. And I felt so proud as everyone was sharing their excerpts. And it would be wonderful, I think we will make these connections work even in the long term. We'll try to keep in touch. And it's just so wonderful to have found other people who have the similar passion and continue on this journey with them.
Thank you for saying that. Anyone else?
I'd just like to say that thank you for taking us out of the echo chambers of our minds and bringing us all on this platform. Sometimes it's very difficult to bring yourself out there and engage as a sort of introvertish kind of person, and this sort of helped at least share my story. So thank you so much.
I think it was Zooey who said earlier that, that the workshopping process is such an important thing when we were starting to talk about the workshop. And we had some people who wrote in saying, what will the process be like? And I think the fact that we really were able, despite the constraints of working online, limited Zoom sessions and so on and so forth, really were able to engage with each other so strongly and really celebrate the process of working with each other. That's come out so much from all your responses. I love that. I think it's telling us that we need to run more out-of-print workshops, which has been at the back of my mind, but one just doesn't there's so many things going on, it gets pushed. So I think Zooey and Vandana will have to make it happen. Yes. Really, thank you all again. Fabulous, fabulous stories to work with. We're here from all over the country, all over the world. Sophia's far away at some early hour of the morning, all of us from different corners. The gender balance was just coincidental. Himanshu, we are really happy to have you here too. And
thanks.
Thank you for your stories. And until next time, we shall send you an email about the whole process of getting into the blog and so on and so forth soon. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Maybe we'll just do a